there is no face of the NBA. And I don't think there really will be anymore. Look, we had it from Tatum coming out and being like, I think I could be the face of the NBA and all this other stuff. We got people talking about basically, it's an international game, then an American game. Do the face of the NBA need to be American? Like who in this next young crop? There's all these things. And it's a very complicated question. I just don't. I was like, and the reason I don't think that there is a face of the NBA. I don't think there is one right now. I don't think it is, and some of that is due to just what the state of the NBA is. It's really something that you really only pick up once it starts getting crunch time toward the playoffs and the playoffs. So therefore, your face of the NBA needs to be somebody that you're going to see in the playoffs. Makes sense. I also don't know if we have the atmosphere anymore that we did in a way where somebody like Steph was able to blow up. Like LeBron was somebody that was able to be around because we knew him from magazines ever since before he even came into the NBA. Kevin Durant, somebody else where it's like phenomenal 1 year dude at Texas and joining up with the upstart team that just came from Seattle and basically was able to come to prominence, all the whole thing. And then Steph comes out of nowhere. But I don't know if we have that same way of somebody becoming that type of phenomenon. And I was like, I get it. We have Wemby right now. And we'll have to see because he's on a sorry team. Then I was like, it might take a minute. Whereas Steph Curry, at least coming from Davidson, we got to be enamored with him through the March Madness. We got to see him through that with Davidson in a way that was like, oh, okay, cool. He went to Golden State, and guess what? He was sort of a little bit of afterthought after a couple of years. Like, if he would have been in New York, like how it was speculated at the time, I was like, we don't know if he would have turned to Curry, but it would have been a bigger thing just because of how things were shown back then of the games and stuff. But Wemby had a chance. And okay, so one, do they need to be American? Sort of. Like, I don't think that they need to be American. But I do think that it has to be somebody that people can easily connect to, and it helps that you're American. That it's easier to be like, oh, he already familiar with like how we talk, our custom, how we do stuff, all this other type of thing. And also we haven't really had, like, yes, we got the most like international people that's probably at the top of the game we have in like quite some time, but we haven't really had anybody that we've wrapped ourselves around or been able to be like, oh yeah, that dude. And I was like, and I think the closest has been maybe Giannis here really recently, and it's sort of weird where like Giannis is at, cause Giannis is he's like 30 or 31 or something, and he's in that middling age where it's like he like I feel like he is a face of the NBA, but we also have sort of pushed him aside in a way that is weird, and given all this attention now to Jokic, and not saying that it's not deserved, but it's also like we also don't really market him either. So it is also weird of like, okay, why are you gonna push this guy that's like Giannis has been in video games, he's in a lot of commercials, he's a pleasant guy to be around, he's willing to talk to you, he has all the stuff that we sort of want out of our superstars. And then as soon as like Jokic's first MVP season, we sort of just like bumped Giannis and got to Jokic. And then Jokic is like, man, and he's also up there in his 30s as well, to where it's like, I mean, I'm going into where I was like around that same age of the 30s, is that it's like, okay, yeah, is this around the target age of the face of the NBA? Now, look, somebody like LeBron and Steph, all them, like, look, they're still sort of the face of the NBA now, so I don't see why Giannis or Jokic can't be that for a little bit later. I was like, Tatum to me is sort of in their grouping. I don't think Tatum gets to be, can he be the next face of the NBA? When I'm like, no, he's been around just as long as they have. He he's already in his middle impact. And if you're not the face of the NBA by now, unless you start rattling off like some championships, you're really not. You're just going to be in that mix. Like that's how it is. You've been around long enough that you're with all of them. Same thing with Embiid. You're with them now. Y'all been here long enough to where it's like y'all are in this middle tier. So that brings us to the younger crowd. And Wemby, I think, had a chance. Shy, Oklahoma City, I don't really think so. Chet, I don't know. Just because I'm like, with Gilgeous there, I'm just like, I don't know if he could, since he won't be the best player there for a minute, can he? Even though he sort of got like the attitude that you sort of need and stuff like that. And I was like, he got a little bit more to him than a lot of other people. But that's hard. My bigger bet is Anthony Edwards. I was like, he's already a good interview. He'd been in a movie, so I'm like, it seemed like that's something that he might want to do, or he has to win a bit to be in start being in commercials. But then it goes to the bigger problem that is like him or Shea or whoever. Like, look, right now they're at the top of the West, and nobody ever shows a highlight. Nobody ever talks about them. Nobody ever does anything with them. And that's that's a really difficult thing to being like, yo, how can they be the top of this when they're not even being featured or nothing? Which goes to my point that I'm like, there is no face. I've already established that. I was like, there's a collection. There's a collection, but there's no solid groups. But I was like, and I think the reason there won't be, and the reason for that, I think, is the NBA whole problem. I don't know if you want to put that on silver or what, but so I don't know how you got some of these young stars. And look, in the playoffs, it's a different ball game. Once you're in the playoffs, they can do their own star talking, if you get what I'm saying. They can do their own thing to where you're like, oh, snap, that dude's awesome. We're going to follow him. And maybe that's what the NBA is waiting on, is that now that all these younger teams are in the playoffs, is that now they'll be able to look and see of like, okay, who's watching what, like how many people are tuning in for which games, and stuff like that in the matchup. Like, despite the matchup, are they watching the game? Like if it's like Timberwolves and Kings, if a lot of people watching it, oh, they're really watching it. They're talking about Anthony Edwards. Oh, okay, cool. Whereas like if it's like Timberwolves Lakers, it's the Lakers. It's not the same thing. But maybe Anthony Edwards shows out enough against the Lakers. Then maybe the NBA is waiting on something like that to pounce and start backing up all their stuff to that person or people for these games. Like how they were sort of fortunate that Tyrese Halliburton had the breakout period during the in-season tournament. It's a new thing. I was like, it's all eyes are on it, and we got a guy that just basically just came up to stardom in there. That not just analysts, people like everybody got to see how good he was. So maybe that's what they're waiting on, but they don't do a good job at all of doing it. And I was like, so I think it's that. I think it's, we live in a different time now where I'm like, because we all got phones, because There's so many ways to watch games, whether it's like League Pass or YouTube TV or whatever sports channel sports thing you do. There's so many ways to watch that. There's 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 really no way to necessarily feature. Whereas like back then, it's like, hey, you was only gonna watch the basketball games on these show channels or whatever. There was still League Pass, but it was like pretty much these channels. So that means that now you have to watch our matchups. You have to see who we're putting out here. We can back everything up, and it's like, guess what? Steph Curry going crazy. Guess what? He on the TNT game tonight. Guess what? And then we're just gonna keep plugging them in, plugging them in. That's what they did. LeBron was on every damn channel, every damn station. That's what they did. Now you don't have that. Now it's like it's you're so spread thin that it's like, okay, cool. Do we put the Timberwolves on the TNT game? We got to. We got to show Anthony Edwards. But it's like, yeah, but the Timberwolves. Who's watching that? It's that type of dilemma. And it's like, I was like, okay, cool. It's like, wait, do we to put, like somebody like Paulo Banchero. I think they've been on TV like once. On a nationally televised game like once in the last like 8 years or so. And I'm like, but somebody like Pablo, Paulo is like, that's your number one pick. You should have him on a lot more games, despite the team's like bad or whatever. But neither here, but I think that's another thing. I think the hype machine of being able to be like, oh, Steph, you over here used to look at the highlight because you're like, yo, Steph went crazy shooting these threes, all this other stuff. Now everything's a highlight. Now everything can be seen. Then it lost that type of value. And I think that's why it's just going to end up sort of being baseball-esque, where it's just kind of like, whoever your favorite team is that's all that you're really going to really be worried about, except for the nationally televised games. Because when you get, most people, when they get like league pass and stuff like that, you watch your main games first. You might check out a couple here and there based on like, oh, let me see what Victor doing or something like that. But for the most part, everybody just watching their teams. And I think with so much movement and all that other stuff now too, that I think that's why people are doing that. And thus, I think that's what creates if they're a phase of the NBA, it's like, no, it's whoever your team is pretty much at this point. Like, you're like, you could see that marquee person, but you're just like, okay, cool, but I'm just going to watch them when they match up my team. Like, unless your team, like, sucks, then you're pretty much going to be glued in, or if you got a team that's competent enough, or maybe your team's so young that you want to see how they play. It's like if you watch the Bulls, and you're not gonna really be watching the Bulls right now. But I was like, I just don't think there's really that many people that is like that. I was like, if he could stay healthy, I would say like LaMelo Ball, because I was like, he got all the stuff and the outside stuff. Because I think that what you need to be also face of the NBA. And that's why I don't know if Victor could be that. Just same way they're like, I don't know if Jokic could be that. And they don't sort of push Giannis to the curb, even if I think Giannis can win a championship here, but now I think he sort of set in what he is. And I mean, which is not really moving the needle anymore. I don't think they didn't back him enough, I felt like, in order to be what they need or want. And that's why I said that's like, it might be the NBA and silver on this. Anyway, let me know who y'all think is or could be, more so probably could be, the face of the NBA at this stage of the game. I know I was like, I haven't said Luka, and that's really because I think that Luka's sort of in the Tatum space. Just because he's been here a while and they've been trying him and it hasn't fully worked. That's why I ain't saying nothing about Luka. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Anyway, I bid you adieu.